Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast. Are you craving more companionship in your daily life? Well, you're not alone. More than half of U.S. adults are lonely. And that number was rising even before the pandemic. It's become such a problem that the Surgeon General has declared an epidemic of loneliness. Ron, you've previously shared that you had a season of loneliness that you experienced post-retirement. Are you surprised to hear the statistics around loneliness?
Yeah, I was. And, we talked off camera, off recording, that I was pretty stunned that this is such an epidemic.
Right.
I hear a lot of people talking about being overworked. I hear a lot of people talk about, maybe their insecurities or frustrations, but loneliness, I don't think is talked about as much as it should be. So we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But Kristin, before we do that, I've got something that will help people not be lonely. Hey, we had some issues there between uploading with Amazon on our 2024 Forward High Performance Planner. It is on Amazon. We've always been very forthright, Chris and I have, so we did it in the form of a book, which we love, but the lower grade books you can't flip through. So expect a lot of social media posts and ads from us, but trust me, it is super, super cool. I just sent it to an executive with a major, as a matter of fact, a top 100 automotive company, and they loved it. So the planner is really cool, and I highly recommend you order it, but we will be making some social media posts to look at the internal parts of it.
Yeah, it won't let you flip inside. We were pretty bummed when we saw that, but don't get you down. And we hope that doesn't get you down and you go check it out still, because it's definitely, it's a life changer. We put everything that we are all about into it.
No kidding. All right, back to loneliness. Kristin, when we were prepping for this, I had to think about, I'm not sure that I felt like I was lonely, which maybe loneliness can mask itself.
Right.
I felt like I was more in shock because there was a part of me that was so thrilled that I didn't have 20 phone calls and 10 meetings. So there was that. And then I had the shock of, when you're federal law enforcement, you've got the badge, the gun, all that stuff, 2 phones. So I almost felt like the government was watching me when I would watch TV. So I may not be the best test case. That's a rare situation where you've worked your whole career and then you retire. But I know that I had trouble sleeping. And I can tell you this, when I did not sleep well, I felt morbid. I had more negative thoughts and more what I would call episodes of depression than anything else. So if I worked out, I hydrated and slept, that's the 3 biggies for me personally, things went a lot better. And I know we're going to get further into this, but a little bit more about this whole topic that I just didn't know was out there like it is. So a lack of social connection is harming people's physical, mental, and social health. There's a difference between loneliness and being alone, and I think that's a very unique distinction. Loneliness is a feeling. It's that gap between your social life you want and the one you actually have. Feeling lonely doesn't mean being alone. It can happen even when you're with others. And I know I did have a friend that was always in groups, and they told me they were lonely, and I'm like, you're always at a social event or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is exactly right. There's a difference in loneliness and feeling alone.
Right. And I've known people who always needed to have somebody around. They were trying to fill this void within. Same thing. They were lonely even when around multiple people constantly. I know that a lot of us have done this. I've done this, where you go on social media and you see your friends, maybe family, and they're out and about, or maybe they're on vacation, and you feel this sense of longingness to either be with them or to be doing something similar. And you look around, it's Friday night, you're streaming Amazon, binging. You could be with a spouse or with a friend or with a family member, but you still feel a little lonely, even though you're not alone. That really is that difference. And, looking more into that tinge of loneliness generally is a lack of action. So you're missing something.
Yeah, I no, there's always an underlying problem, almost always. Now, if you're bedridden with a health condition, that's a different world. But you're exactly right. And Kristin, as you were talking just now, I thought about, as you know, this is my busiest month ever since I started my company. So I'm doing nothing but getting on a plane, flying somewhere. Yeah. You hang out with people. Like I might go to dinner with a couple of people that maybe I knew from the federal law enforcement world. But in general, I sit at an airport, number one. I usually work or do something. I fly there, and then you're with some people you don't really know.
Right.
It's fun, but you don't really know. And then you usually speak the next day. Then I'm back at an airport sitting. So I do think if I allowed it to, the way when I'm traveling heavily, it could get lonely.
Right.
It's not. I'll put it this way. I had someone the other day go, "Oh my God, if I could have anybody's life, it would be yours." And I was like, "Oh, you like sitting in airports? That's cool." I'm glad that works for you.
See, but that's just going back to someone on social media saying, "Oh my gosh, I want that person's life. I want to be doing what they're doing," when they probably, they very well could be saying the opposite.
Yeah,
it's
no
really
kidding.
Interesting.
So, Kristin, a little more from our research.
Yeah.
When you work in isolation, which is being apart from others, means having few close relationships and social groups. Not everyone who's alone or isolated feels lonely. Man, I know some people, they never get lonely. It's just the reality. Yeah. But for most people, ongoing isolations and feeling of loneliness can both be leave you depressed, but also it's bad for your health. The pandemic took many people from feeling of loneliness to isolation, and that's the point where you can increase your risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, dementia. I mean, it's all so depressing. I don't even want to read it all.
Sounds like one of those commercials.
and the reason for that is your stress hormone, cortisol, goes up, and that alone comes with an array of issues. So we are created to be social creatures.
Right.
And Kristin, it's really funny, but I went in a phase where I watched Naked and Afraid.
My husband loves that show.
Yeah, they blur out the nudity,
but
it's really interesting to watch the dynamics. And the 21-day challenges start off with 2 people, and it's so interesting, but it almost goes across the board. One person taps out; they can't make it. So let's say they're in day 8, day 12. That other person is trying to get food, trying to stay warm, freezing. But the repetitive theme is, I don't think I can do this alone. They miss being with someone, even if they didn't really even like them. They miss having that extra person. So when we establish that I'm not created to be alone by myself all the time, some alone moments are great, but we're just not created to live on an island. We're not.
And on that, there is a show called Alone, and that's the whole point of it is you have these master survivalists, and they tap, not because they can't do it. A lot of them have it all put together. They're catching fish, hunting, but they are lonely, and they tap, and they miss out on a lot of money, but they don't care. They want to get back to family. So that is absolutely profound. I mean, if you really think about it, loneliness is a huge deal. I know that, talking about this cortisol and stress hormone and really how horrible it can be for your physical health. I'll share that, and I've talked about this briefly in past episodes, but in 2019, my daughter was undergoing her first brain surgery, and she had had seizures since she was 6 months old. And so we didn't know if this brain surgery was going to get rid of her seizures, but we knew there was something in there that they needed to remove. But the stress I was under, my body started shutting down, and I'm a healthy person. I went from, I was losing weight, which I didn't mind that part, I'll be honest on that. But I had such bad acid reflux. I had acid reflux for like 6 months straight to where it felt like I had strep throat. That was on the minor scale, but I had tachycardia. My legs felt heavy. I had pins and needles throughout my body. My hands at night would feel like they were sunburnt. And I went in, and they probably thought I was crazy. I kept going in. This is happening to me now. And I'm someone, I don't even like going to the doctor, but my body was shutting down. In a nutshell, it turned out to be stress. They ran an array of tests on me, thought I had autoimmune at one point. Every single test was normal, and it was stress. As soon as my daughter's surgery was over, every single symptom of mine went away. So that just shows you I was in bad shape, and it was from stress. So when we talk about cortisol, that can be incredibly damaging. And when you aren't around people, that cortisol level increases.
Yeah, just words of affirmation and things that it's going to be okay is, oh my God, it's like medicine when you take it.
It really is.
So, Kristin, we've identified there's a clear link between loneliness and isolation leading to stress, which is associated with negative health impacts. And we went through a bunch, and there's a bunch more. As always, though, we have solutions. We want to help improve your connections. I think we have about 6 of those. So I'm going to start us off. Number 1, nurture your relationships. Strong relationships take time and effort to grow, but they're worth the investment for your health and well-being. We recommend that you take time each day to reach out to a friend, coworker, or a family member. Do not assume others don't want to hear from you. They're probably thinking the same thing. And I have a friend, we do that every time. It's like, you haven't called me. Well, you haven't called me. But seriously, and I say this all the time, this is separate, but I've had people say I have trouble making friends, and I do get that. But it's so important to be a good listener and ask those open-ended questions so you can generate conversation. Some people are just shy.
Right.
And you kind of have to prod them along just a little bit. But you can't make friends if you talk about yourself all the time and dominate the conversation. And you leave that person, even if they don't even pick up on it, they just don't feel good. We need to leave people feeling good because they were in our presence. Find out something they do and brag on them.
Yes.
I had someone the other day was showing me, well, Kristin, you know, I had a death in the family, and I went in, I've been in Florida, and my cousin's husband was showing me a hobby, and I don't know this world, but you take literally a magnifying glass and you paint these characters. And if he listens to this, he's going to be so angry that I don't know.
Is it a train?
It's like Star Wars kind of creatures. It's
okay.
It's that science fiction genre.
Okay.
But I have to be honest with you. He kept saying, "You sure you want to see this?" But see, I love to see people's talents. It doesn't matter. I don't care what they're doing. And I was so intrigued. I'm sitting here with him. I said, "You painted this?" And he said, "Yeah." And he's got little special tools. And it was just so cool. So my point to that is show interest in other people's hobbies, work, family. When you are around someone and they got a small child, you need to pay attention to that child. Speak to that child. You're so cute. If they've got a dog, do the same thing. And it will absolutely make them want to spend more time with you.
Right. Because if you don't, it's awkward. And they don't want to have you around again. I can guarantee it. So I love that. So we've discussed that I'm a huge proponent of hanging on to relationships, even if they don't check every friend box. So that's something that helps, especially relationships with longevity. So number 2, show people that you care. Answer the phone when they call. And if you're like me, I see an incoming phone call and it makes me a little anxious. In my head, I'm going, they didn't tell me they were going to call me. Is everything okay? I wonder why they're calling me. And Kristin,
Kristin, I called 5 times. What's the big deal? I was just trying to put the show together.
Oh my God. It's so funny. Because like literally all of that processes through my mind within like a second. So then I answer, hey. But I'm getting better and better at actually just making phone calls. But seriously, I'm such a texter. You would think I'm younger than I am. But so that is a real thing. So answer your phone when they call, even though it may make you slightly uncomfortable. And, Ron, I don't know. I'm just curious. Am I alone on that? Are you a big phone call guy, or what are your thoughts on calls?
I am not a phone call guy, but if I am busy or I'm not in a good space, I will do the text. Can I call you later?
Yeah.
Or I customize it. Can I, I'll call you in an hour.
Right.
My daughter has always got her phone silenced, and I love the little icon where it says notify them anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I put call me, and I always push notify them anyway, and it I don't even know what it does on the other end, but God, it makes me feel better.
That's hilarious. I do that sometimes to people as well. I'm like, I'm just going to go for it. What's the worst it does? Buzz your phone twice. Well, it's important also, make sure you make time to see your friends in person. Listen. This goes back to what you were just saying, Ron. Listen and follow up on what they shared with you. Did they tell you about a vacation they booked, a work presentation coming up, their child's recital? Check in after these events happen. Be the type of friend that you want to have. Authentic, supportive, and engaged. I'm sure you've talked to somebody before and you can tell they're not quite listening. I don't know what the terminology would be, but they're half listening, but in their mind, they can't wait to speak next. It's like they're listening, but really what they're doing is thinking about what they're going to say about themselves. Right. And go for it.
Well, in training, there's a term, active listening.
Active listening, yes.
Empathetic listening.
Yes.
And then the next level that has kind of caught on is listening to understand. So you can be, like you said, you can be active listening, but you are processing how you're going to respond, or that one-up person, which I have to watch myself because I really do have a lot of stories.
Yes.
And sometimes when I'm talking to somebody, I'm itching to tell this story.
Yes.
And sometimes I just stay silent. I'm like, oh man, that's great.
I am the
because
same
I don't want to be the
way.
one-up you. I don't want to be the one-up you guy.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's great that you said that, because someone that does have a lot of experience or a lot of knowledge on something, I'm the same way. I'm like, I have to stop myself and say the same thing. Don't be that person. Just let them have it and
let me
show
give
them
some
that you
advice.
care.
Let me give some advice too on friendship.
Yeah.
If you're talking to a cop, say David, don't tell him that one law enforcement story. They live that all the time, unless it's really funny. But don't tell them when you got mad at that cop or how the cops did you wrong. If someone's a nurse, don't tell them how the nurses were terrible at the hospital. They don't want to hear that.
No, they don't.
They've dealt with that stuff. Ask them about them, or if they want to talk about their stories. But they know every story that could possibly happen in an ER or whatever their field is. But I'm telling you, Kristin, I can't help it. But when I was really active on the job, I would have people want to tell me, well, this trooper pulled me over, and I'm like, really, I don't care. Like, the story's not interesting for me. Or I love this one, and please, people, don't think I'm being mean, but I have somebody that goes, hey, my cousin is a U.S. Marshal in Brooklyn. Do you know him? And they tell you his name. I'm like, yeah, we had lunch yesterday.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So think about how you're going to nurture these relationships.
Right.
Be wise. Be smart.
Yes, it's so true. And as you were talking, it made me think of this. I got a really bad taste in my mouth when I was meeting one of my dear friends' boyfriends. And he knew I worked at a specific bank. And he meets me. One, he didn't take his sunglasses off. And I thought that was just kind of rude. We were eating outside, but when you're first meeting somebody, I think actual eye contact is appropriate. So he didn't take his sunglasses off, and then he immediately says, you work at such and such bank, right? And I was like, yeah. And I was very proud of my career and everything I had achieved. And he starts trash talking my bank. And it was something that completely not even in my world at the bank. And I got the worst taste in my mouth, and I really wanted nothing to do with him for many years. So to Ron's point, don't do that. Even if it's just like you're saying, hey, do you know, let's actually think about the probability or lack thereof of somebody knowing someone in the same job when there's thousands and thousands of them.
Yeah.
Something else, I'll just follow up on this. We talked about, being the kind of friend you want to have in the workplace. A great way to increase connections with others is to write people thank you notes or emails, though we've previously discussed that actually a handwritten note goes much farther.
Yeah.
And then practice gratitude. Practicing gratitude has the added benefit of helping you build resilience, and it's a win-win for their well-being and yours.
It is. Kristin, this came up today. Someone told me they got a bonus because they had to do 2 jobs for a while. And thank goodness they obviously have an intuitive boss that appreciated the extra hard work.
Yeah.
They got a couple extra grand. And this person is quite young. I said, send your boss a handwritten card.
Yes.
And she said, what? I said, send your boss a mail it, put it in the mail, send it. I said, it's gonna mean a lot. And she said she would do it. So
great advice.
See, I'm learning from the podcast as well.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Hey, that's excellent advice.
All right, Kristin, this is a big one. Number 3, spend less time online and on your phone. People think, and this is what I did wrong. When I was going through whatever that weird time was when I retired, I started binge watching Netflix. It seems entertaining at the moment. It's like drinking or, smoking for people or whatever. It might make you feel better in the moment, but in the long run, you don't feel better.
Did you watch Tiger King? Is that what it was? Tiger.
I'm ashamed to say yes, but I did.
Is that what it was called? Tiger King?
Yes,
Something
sure,
like
Kristin.
that.
I thought you got that tattoo.
I binge watched that too in 2020.
Yeah.
It was a mistake.
I know. It was. That's time I'll never get back in my life.
Same.
But I didn't know we'd ever be discussing Tiger King on this podcast.
Oh, my gosh.
So the problem with technology is it does seem to be soothing and all that, but there's so many studies that show it definitely hinders sleep. At night, I do a crossword puzzle. I've got a little routine at night like most people do, but I put that screen very dim and I might work one crossword puzzle, or I do old-fashioned reading, which is great. And by the way, when you're an author, everybody gives me a book to read. So I've got a stack. Like, you got to read this.
Oh, my
I've got a stack, but I'm working my way through them.
Nice.
And I'm trying to get there. But seriously, especially when you're with someone, I've told this story before, but my daughter one time said to me, Dad, when I'm talking to you, please don't look at your phone. And that's all it took for me. And I laid it down. But again, if you're feeling lonely and you keep doing the same thing over and over, we know the definition of insanity, right?
Exactly.
We're expecting different results. So you got to experiment. I said last week, get a PhD in you. You got to find out what makes you feel better. So experiment taking breaks from that phone.
Yeah.
I can tell you social media drives me mad sometimes, and I will post and walk away. I've told Kristin this before, and I don't check it because I spend more time than I should probably on social media.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. Put it away.
What else you got, Kristin?
So another one, and I know you have been a big proponent of this also, help people in your community. So volunteering in your community can ease your feelings of loneliness and even improve your health by lowering stress levels. Joining a group that serves others can widen your social network and help you meet people with similar interests. My in-laws live in the Villages, Florida. And the coolest part about that, it is a 55 and up community. I've said this before, it's like Disneyland for adults. There's so much to do, live music every night. But the cool part that I'm getting to here is that there is a group or a club for everyone. It's amazing. So I know that a lot of New Yorkers live in the Villages, and there's a New Yorker club. There's a New York Yankee club, a New York Mets club. So there is no shortage of socialization there. And I think that is a great way to live out your retirement years. But also volunteering, it supports social connections throughout your community, and that sense of community is incredibly important. And it's also important to get involved in something you actually enjoy or care about. It's going to make that go so much farther. I mean, it could be from charity to the arts, but do something you're passionate about. Otherwise, it will feel like a task. It won't feel like the positive we want this to be. Something else you can do, you can mentor someone in your community who values your life experiences. What about that, Ron?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, that's a good one. But let me say one side note.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Villages. You completely ruin that every time I see a commercial or I hear somebody mention it. Now you told me it had the highest STD rate. So when you were saying, my brain was going, you said they socialize. I wanted to go, they sure do.
They sure do. I know.
There's some
it's
things
funny.
you don't need to say, Kristin.
I know.
Like
there was some loofah thing. There was like a whole... And when my in-laws first moved there, I got them a variety pack of loofahs. You have to look this up for if you're listening and you don't know what I'm talking about. Look up loofah in the villages.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it has to do with the STD rate, let's just say. So I hung a loofah on my, they're all different colors, and depending on what color, that's what you're into. So I hung one on my father-in-law's golf cart, because that's what you're supposed to do. And unfortunately, he realized it, and he threw it off before they left, but... Just fun times. But yeah, they do socialize, Ron, that's for sure. There's a club for everything.
Apparently there is. Listen, I hated the joke because helping in the community and helping other people, I think that's the key to minimizing depression, minimizing loneliness. So take that part seriously. Forget that other stuff that we said.
Read between the lines.
Okay. Which one's you next, Kristin?
Well, yeah, I'll take this one.
Take that.
All right. Join social groups, similar to what I was just talking about. But I recently watched a documentary on centenarians, people who live to 100 and past. And there is a study, and it's called the blue zones. That's where the majority of these centenarians live. Now, these blue zones, the documentary I watched, this guy travels to all the blue zones, and he's trying to collect data on why are these people living so long? Like, what's the commonality? What are they doing? And really, it came down to, there were numerous, of course, diet and being active, not even working out, just being active, gardening. But one thing was they all had strong social groups. Either they lived with their family or they were part of their community, an active part of the community. And that was the one commonality with all these blue zones. And I thought that was very impactful.
Kristin, believe it or not, when we were researching, I saw you had this on there. I read the book years ago. That book's probably 10 years old, maybe older. But you're right. And just to give our listeners some perspective, they go all over the world. This is not an American thing, but there is a group in California. They're like the Church of Latter-day Saints or something, and they value, food and exercise and all that stuff. But most of these, even though I'm a huge meat eater, a lot of them are vegetarians or they eat fish. That. Like Okinawa, there was people that just ate a little bit of fish. But you're right. Yeah. There's 9, I believe, I haven't read it in a long time, and I think there was 9 common denominators. They had faith. They may not have all believed the same way, but they all had faith, which was very important.
Yeah.
But I read something in there, and this is unique. Like in some of the cultures, some of the Asian cultures, you may get married and still live in the same house or live next door. In America, we become so transient that you're hours and hours away from family. Yeah. And you, of course, you do make friends, but you still need your family. And I think it's very unique that one of those common denominators was absolutely the social network. It was like family, social network. But also these studies, most of them got like 5 miles of walking and that type thing every day. Yeah. So the formula's there. It's having the discipline and the follow through to be that engaged.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like you read it and I watched it, but the Okinawa thing was really cool because they had a social group, and I forgot the name of it, the Japanese term, but it was basically a financial social group where if one of these, let's say 10 people were to be in the hospital and the bills went outside of their insurance, they would all group together and cover it. And there was just this peace knowing that if that was to happen to you, you had this group that would financially back you. Yeah. And I was like, wow, can you imagine that weight off your shoulders if you had something like that?
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, Kristin, I don't know. I probably should not be the one to take the next one, but I will. Adopt a pet.
It's the last one.
Well, actually,
there's 7.
There's one more.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're not allergic, I'm reading, ladies and gentlemen, consider adopting or fostering a pet. Caring for an animal can help reduce loneliness, depression, and anxiety. So one time when I was at the academy, we make it stressful. It's stress inoculation we want to develop. And the last week you're doing scenarios, you're taking written exams, you have to fight your way out of this room. Like, it's intense.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, someone put on the evaluation they needed therapy dogs, and it was not as a joke. So I sent it to the head of our system, and I said, hey, what's the budget code on those therapy dogs? And we got a good laugh. But I know it's a thing. I really do. And I've always said, when I get older, older than I already am, and I'm just hanging out at the old condo or whatever, I might get a dog or something. But I listen, I love animals. I travel too much. It is what it is. But I can see the beauty in it. So you better speak to that, Kristin.
Yeah, well, I know that I have, so just so everyone knows, I have a Chihuahua who's almost 17, and she is in great health. I mean, she's blind and deaf, but she is doing amazing. I'm like 90% blind, so she can still navigate her way around.
That's optimism, folks, right there. She's great. She's wonderful. She's blind to death, but she's amazing.
I have to do this dolphin noise so she knows I'm like in the room. I won't do it on here. It would be really loud.
Please, Kristin.
I have to go.
Okay.
Except
Kristin, I was only kidding. I didn't think you would do it. Now I know what I'm going to put on a caption on social media.
Oh my gosh.
Hear Kristin with her dolphin impressions.
And then I have to wave my arms around, so she can see me. But I look forward to, so I had 2 Chihuahuas. They were actual sisters, same mom and dad. And the other one passed away. I had mentioned it on a podcast back in June. But she lived till almost 15. So I've had these 2 pups, and for me, even though I have 2 kids I'm taking care of and a husband, and it's different. I really look forward to going downstairs. I can't wait. She's excited to see me. And I'll just sit there and pet her. And I did read that if you pet cat or dog, bunny, whatever you have, for 15 minutes, your blood pressure goes down, and people with pets live longer. So there are some real scientific elements to it. And there is that sense of you're taking care of, you're nourishing, and you're appreciated and needed. So there is that sense of purpose that comes along with having a pet. So if you can, I highly suggest.
I'm almost persuaded. Can I pet a goldfish with that?
Oh my gosh. I will not do, my in-laws have birds, and they're these birds that live until like 80 years old. I don't know the breed or what, but I told them, do not will those to me. I have nothing in my heart. I am a big animal person, but I do not want birds that just sit in a cage. So my mother-in-law is going to, when they go, they're going to send them off to my brother-in-law and his wife, because they're going to outlive them for sure. It's like crazy. So birds and fish, they don't count.
Okay. Kristin, I'm going to take us home.
All right, let's do it.
Number 7 is get help. And I'm a person of faith. You are. I'm not ashamed of that. Apparently, it's not cool in states anymore. But, go talk with your minister. Go talk to a friend who can add faith-filled words to your life. A lot of times, I've told you before, I've went into the book of Psalms, and there's so much encouragement there. But also, I never tell people not to see a psychiatrist, or it's whatever works for you. There's no individual. Everyone is different. But you got to get help. Get help. Don't stay miserable and then look back 10 years from now and your life was just a blur and you don't have any memories. You don't have any moments. You don't leave a legacy. Don't be that person. It's time to make a change. Do something different tomorrow than you did today and begin to work on you, because this, number 1, it's miserable. It creates health problems. Then you actually become a burden to other people where you really need to be an asset to them. And it's just that spiral we've talked about. It's a vicious cycle, and it's time to get out of it. It's time to get up and start making something of your life. Here's the problem, Kristin. When we get depressed or we're lonely, a lot of times it's disarming. What I mean by that is you don't feel like if, let's say you want to lose weight, then you can go into battle. You can challenge that. But when people are depressed and lonely, they don't have the energy. They don't want to do anything.
Right.
So basically, that you have to start somewhere. And we talked a lot about, getting you remotivated into taking things into small steps. So don't wallow in the mud. Get a plan. I like to write a plan down and write down something I want to do different tomorrow, but start somewhere.
Small too.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, start small, start somewhere. I agree.
Yeah, and reach out to that friend you haven't talked to in a while. Watch how it lifts your spirits. If it is getting an animal, take the steps to do that. I can certainly see the joy, that people get, especially, when you see puppies, let's face it, it gives you this happy feeling. But the reason we do the podcast, it's a leadership podcast. We call it Where Leadership Meets Entertainment. We do try to entertain you, but we want you to live a fulfilled, happy, strong life. And if we can help that, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's powerful. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we tackled this topic to know that 50% of U.S. adults feel some loneliness on a scale, right? A sliding scale. That is profound. And so this is something that you generally aren't going to see on a leadership podcast. I'm glad we tackled it, and I'm glad that you tuned in, because hopefully this either helps you or share it with someone that you feel could benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget to get your Forward High Performance Planner. It is on Amazon. Be watching out for our social media posts. We're going to show you the interior. Kristin and I designed it. We do quotes. It's got challenges in there, pro tips. You rate yourself. It's really an awesome planner. I ordered some, Chris. I don't know if you have yet, but I'm going to send you the internal link.
No, I'm excited. Got that link today.
Yeah, you get 49 cents off your copies.
Excellent.
And Kristin, what can people do to help us on this podcast? What can they do?
Definitely join our group on Facebook. That has been so fun, so much interaction, and we've been able to get so many great topics to cover. And and you guys don't even know, it goes really far. The feedback you give us, we run with it. So that's number one. But we're on Facebook, Instagram, on LinkedIn. So follow us, share your feedback, and also subscribe if you haven't already, and share us out anywhere you get your podcasts. They're free.
Absolutely. All right, be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.